Alderwoman Tice.
Here.
Alderman Gould.
Here.
Alderman Shelton.
Here.
All members are present.
Amendments or changes to the agenda? Seeing none, move by acclamation. Any citizen comments?
No.
Fairgraves up there. All right, we'll go into reports. I have no report. Alderman Tice?
No report.
No report.
Alderman Jack?
No report.
All right, department commission reports. Public Works, the laundry list of WIP. Work in process.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of a smattering of all kinds of stuff, so just jump in and stop me wherever you want. Strassner streetlights, we called Meyer. Meyer said they talked to their supply house, but they still don't have a definitive ship date. So those are for those two lights that were damaged. One of them's installed, but that's the wrong one, wrong color, wrong voltage. So supply house hasn't gotten back with him, so I don't have a better answer on the ship date for that. York Village solar light, the light that was not working at 9 Middlesex, we actually swapped it out. So we put one together at the yard at Public Works. I confirmed it worked twice, like came in at night, checked it out, put new firmware on it, and we just moved it and it's working. I know I've got confirmation from Alderman Plufke, it's fine. The only thing we have to do now is on Northcote, there's a light that's got a slight lean to it, and I don't know why, because the bolts are torqued enough, but we actually talked to Contractors Welding, ordered some shims, and we're gonna loosen it, put the shims underneath there and kind of elevate it on one side to make it plumb. So, but the light itself works, it's just, it has a slight lean to it for whatever reason. The MSD project on Rosalie White Bridgeport, I know Luth did their final restoration on that fence at the dead end of White on the south side. And it looks like all the roads are restored. I haven't received any word from Luth to do a walkthrough. They wanted to do a punch list, but they were gonna do it with MSD first and then us, but to my knowledge, that hasn't happened. The
That's
bollards.
done then, though. I mean,
The what?
we're done with all that then, that nightmare.
Yes, yeah. And the bollards were put up. I know that the chain is just kind of coiled around the tree. I need to remove that and the barricades, but I know Parks put in some bollards and then they had ordered 4 and then we put in the other 2 down by Swim Club. So it should make it pretty challenging for a car to try to drive up and down there. Not to say they couldn't
Other issue,
blow through it.
the other issue is that I believe we've heard that the LSV, so, okay, I'll leave it at that.
Might be too narrow, but
Right.
Okay.
And are those, those could be moved a little bit or?
Yeah, they're just
oh,
anchored in, so it's like all you'd have to do is unbolt it, drill new anchor sleeves, and then bolt it, you know, a few inches or feet.
Okay, so we could adjust if.
Yeah, it's not like you
if
would lose
something
it. Yeah.
comes up later that we decide, oh, let's make it just a little bit more. Okay.
Yeah, because I don't know what the width of an LSV is. I mean,
48
I don't-
inches.
How much?
48 inches.
48?
You've
48
measured-
exactly, but I
You've
mean, you
measured
need,
it or you tried?
No, they told me.
but they would need a few inches on either side. I mean, 48 is probably the edge to edge.
Should be keeping all hands and feet within the vehicle at all times.
Yeah.
I know that's a challenge, because if you make them too wide, then people are gonna drive their car down it.
Exactly.
So,
That's,
like,
yeah, that's why I wanted to make sure. It's like, well, you can't go much further because like a Fiat or something small would slide through there.
And obviously, residents enjoyed having that road there. for
Right.
sure. Well, thanks for all your work on that. I know that was not, you know, us per se or you.
Right.
But I appreciate your hard work and, you know, talking to Ethan all the time and Luth and coordinating all that.
Yeah, and the fence looks good. I don't know if you saw it. I mean, it's a lot better than what they had there, so they can keep their dog in the backyard.
All right, thank you for that.
The RFP that Vernon Jones is doing, I know that we have one last pay application we received, and I don't know if they poured it yet. I know they were trying to pour that last amount of slab work this week, you know, with the weather and all, but assuming that they get that poured by tomorrow, then they could do restoration next week. So it's rapidly winding down. And I know down the page, there is a manhole cover that's on the opposite side, like near 2323. And just over time, you know, where that manhole top ring is penetrated through the slab, there's multiple joints there. And over time, I think that different, you know, material, the concrete and steel flexing differently has caused a break there. So our suggestion is, like in the spring, we'll just saw cut out that one little bad area and just put a box around it with an expansion joint material. That way, if there is differing expansion contraction, it won't split the whole slab. It'll just stay that little area is its own little independent island. And then the Litzinger Road bike awareness, we did get some costs for signs and sharrows, which would just be the little chevrons and the picture of the bike, like a stencil. Because you can't do a full bike lane there because it's not wide enough, but we can actually mark the pavement. I do want to explore costs with the thermoplastic, because I did look up, they make thermoplastic sharrows, and you can put them on asphalt or concrete, and I thought, well, that would be more durable than paint. Paint, typically, we're doing every single year. The thermoplastic, usually you can get 3 or more years out of it. So I'd like to see what the cost difference is between paint and thermoplastic. Since we're not putting in a huge amount of them, I would hope that just the durability of not having to send people out there painting and disrupting traffic would be worth doing thermoplastic.
Yeah, and prior to the meeting, sorry, just about an hour prior to the meeting, I did send an email.
I did see it, yep.
I just remembered that over in Kirkwood off of North Geyer and Doherty Ferry, they had really well-marked crosswalks with the nice bold striping, zebra striping, and I really like their stencil. So the bike lane stencil, is that similar to what we're
In
going
your
to put in?
picture, it showed like a sharrow, so it'd be the two like V's, you know, the
Yep, the
chevrons, and then
chevrons
a picture of the
Of
bike.
the bike.
So
And
we
then
can
it
either
had
do
like
in a
little dashes to kind of say, you know, this is.
The dashes are for a bike lane, which we can't really fit in there, but we could do the sharrows like along Litzinger in that lane that's between high school and McKnight. And if we wanted to continue, we could do it elsewhere.
Well, I mean, I think if there's a material that, like I said in my email, I think it's important for us, not just for Litzinger, but explore several streets of our mostly traveled streets that we have jurisdiction over, and, you know, update them, and put some
Right.
of that the markings on. I noticed a lot of our pedestrian crosswalks are just the two thin lines that go from one of the ADA curb cuts to the other curb cut. And they are difficult to see if you're not paying attention. So I think, you know, replacing those eventually with the zebra stripe, and if that needs to be the plastic, you know, coating or
You
whatever.
can do those, yeah. The other one would be like continental, or the rectangular ones like you see at McKnight, where it goes from Tillis, like near Sonora. You know, those you can see like when you're looking down the road a lot easier than if it's just a bar that's going perpendicular.
And I even noticed at the intersection of Doherty Ferry and Geyer that it was either painted a red color, or it was I don't know if that was actually applied during the concrete when they laid it, but it
Yeah, I
was a
don't know.
different color within
Yeah.
the intersection, which definitely stands out.
I know for our GRG stuff that some of that's a different color, because we had to agree to paint it and keep it that same color scheme that GRG's wanting.
So just some things to investigate as we continue to look at making streets more visible and safe.
The Evans Howard Monument, the application from N-Graphics has been submitted to Planning and Development. I know I looked at it on MyGov. It came in last week, and as soon as planning approves it, then they'll schedule the crew to go out there and put in the monument foundation. And then assuming that the weather cooperates, they should be able to do that brickwork too. You know, it just can't be, you know, probably below 40, because you'll run the risk of possibly having that concrete freeze, you know, the grout. But the goal was to try to put it in during December and have like a ribbon cutting in January. 8543 Eulalie, oh, the water runoff. So that particular one, we put in a curb, which I had included a picture in your packet. Gonzalez Companies, if you recall, that Site 29, that actually had investigated that address plus the address just to the west of it. But it's expensive, you know, it's roughly $152,000. And it didn't rank very high. Out of the 26 public jobs, it ranked number 25 or 25th. So we thought, well, what can we do with the money that we have and the staff that we have and the time that we have in the year? So we put in a 6-inch curb from the inlet going north up to the apron of the garage that's to the east side of Helen. And then we also took the planer and then kind of ground down almost a half an inch in front of that apron and built up the berm, so that if the water comes across from the north, like from Rosalie along that east side, it's got a little more cross section to go through, and then hopefully it'll divert against the curb and then into the inlet. That's the theory. And then in spring, we would continue from the apron going north all the way up to Rosalie with a new curb, and then from the inlet going south to Eulalie. So at least put in new curb on the east side. I think that'll help mitigate some of the runoff. I know the resident would like to know what we're gonna do to the backyard where he feels that the runoff is, worsened the condition of the yard, which there is a sinkhole. I don't know if you've been back there, but I went out there, he showed it to me, and I can't say with 100% certainty it's from that, but, it's from something. Because, there's properties to the north of him that aren't adjacent to Helen that the water would come from Rosalie and go in his backyard.
Will we take that out of the Gonzalez plan then? Since we were able to do it locally without?
I would, yeah, because I thought, well, whatever we can get done, and then really it's just a matter of piping then, but that's an MSD question. It's undersized piping.
So I'm glad that we were able to do this, and I think you're going to talk about another one next, but I'm a little perplexed that we spent all this time, money, and effort to hire outside consultants, to have outside people rank these issues, and a couple of residents have come and we're doing their projects. So it seemed like we had Gonzalez come in to avoid that. So, should I just tell people whose addresses didn't get in the project to come and complain, and then we'll do something? It's just sort of troubling to me that we're not compliant. We all agreed to do this report, and I think it's probably one of the more forward-thinking things that we've done, and now we're not adhering to
I
it.
think this was just a one-off,
Yeah.
and it will not happen again.
Yeah, and it was simple because it's curb. If there's other ones that are within that group of 26 that would just be curb, which there isn't, this still has pipe. I know you said that it's not the pipe that's causing the flooding, but I find it hard to believe because you're going from larger pipes to a smaller pipe back to a larger pipe. And I know that Gonzalez looked at it hydraulically and said, yeah, that I think it's either a 15 or an 18 and it needs to go to a 24. The one that goes in the backyards, it's undersized for the amount of drainage area that you have. So, but we thought, well, the curb was deteriorated, there's pieces that were missing. It was asphalt on that
Yeah,
east side.
and
Yeah.
that clearly needed to be fixed for different reasons, and it happened to help the water, but I feel, I have lots of people who can come in and talk about this. I have somebody
Right.
who thinks they have a stream under their house. I can match all these
Right.
with other residents, and we need to be fair.
Yeah, and the strange part with that street is that on the west side, it already is 6-inch vertical curb. On the east side, it's a hodgepodge of concrete, asphalt. Some of the asphalt sticks up maybe 2 inches. It's just worn down, and as you've added more material to the street, it's less useful. The water can soar over that little bit of rise. So,
But I completely agree with you,
Yeah.
Nancy. So this is, we had this prioritization, and this was the plan. I was surprised to see you starting to work on this. I know we had tried some very small things like cleaning out some of the sewer grates, that we thought we could just do. I will say, this one didn't require engineering, and we don't know if it's going to fix the problem or not. Gonzalez.
right, that's what I said, is I
didn't
don't
think
know
this
that it'll
would
do
fix the
anything.
problem.
I just knew with the broken
Before we
curb.
do this again, we will bring it to the committee.
Yeah. Yeah, and if there's any other ones that it's a broken curb, obviously that needs to be fixed because it could be a tripping hazard or something, so. Mystery water on Barnstable, I still don't know because I don't have a straight answer from Missouri American. I know that, you can't see it today because it's wet, but I don't know if the resident has indicated that they came out. They did do a ticket. They were supposed to be out there in either late September, beginning of October. And I know because it's on private property, they typically don't share that information. They can just tell you that a ticket was completed and a technician went out.
Yeah, I think the way we left it is they were going to test the water.
Right. And
Right.
And to find out if there was, chemicals in there that
Right.
would indicate that it's a leak from one of their pipes, and if not, if it seems to be natural cause, then we know it's not their problem.
Right. Well, I know that customer service doesn't have an answer, but I can always reach out to the folks at Missouri American that we do know and see if they can, based on the address, give us any additional information.
Beth is very forthcoming, so
Yeah.
if you need me to reach out to her and ask if they've actually come to do what they said they were gonna do. Now, I don't know if they even need to get into the property because there's so much water coming from that
Right.
outflow. Presumably, they could just take a collection of water from that and test it, I would guess.
Yeah, because they were supposed to investigate to see whether it was either A, their main, or B, a service line, or C, some
Right.
other source.
Right.
You know, but if it had the parameters of potable water, then more than likely,
Yeah, if it had
it's the service or the main.
Fluoride in it or whatever it is.
Yeah,
that-
chlorine, fluoride, yeah.
Yeah, then you would know it would come from their source.
Mm.
But,
Yeah, I
okay.
can just check with their engineering folks.
Yeah, I mean,
'cause-
I think we're really waiting on that.
Right.
And because if it is truly an underground spring, then she's doing what she can do to control it from her basement.
Right.
But the problem is that that water has to go somewhere. And so she gets it out of her basement, and it will go to the street, no matter how far you put that outflow on her property, it's all gonna roll downhill. So it ends up on the main street in the intersection and flowing down Salem, and, you know, could cause, especially in the winter here, causes issues, so for a lot of people. But
I'm gonna go again. And we have, I know it's York Village, it's a private street, but one of our trash trucks got on ice because there was water flowing off the property onto the street. The trash truck got stuck. If that had been an ambulance,
I know,
that would
it's
have
a
been
problem.
horrible. So, I mean,
No,
I don't
get
know
it,
how
I
to
get it.
solve this, but there's a limit to, if this was not in the plan, I feel really strongly that we need to adhere to the plan. And
That one
if-
is in the report,
and-
too.
It is in the report, and it is ranked at least in, like, I don't know, 15th or something like
Yeah.
that. But I think what the question was, is how they determined the ranking based on how many people does this impact. With that in particular, I think they kind of said, oh, it was just sort of impacting her, which clearly when it runs all the way down the street and
Yes.
causes problems, it impacts more than just her. So that's where, and I think in your situation too, we got to call to question, is the ranking that you've done and to the formula that you've done, you know, from an efficiency standpoint and all of that, is it still accurate when you look at it as the impact that we are observing? And did they observe that in your case and in this case correctly? And if they did, fine, then it's ranked whatever it is. But we still have to deal with putting salt on the street, I'm sure,
Yeah.
which will degrade the street. So it's not just a private issue. And I'm sure this situation where you are is the same thing. So, I mean, I totally understand where you're coming from, and I agree. I just want to make sure that the metrics that they've evaluated are sound.
But, you know, so we're leaving the stormwater master plan open. It's going to be a living document, right? So new submittals can happen. And I think the
Correct.
way we left it in previous discussions, that, you know, if there are certain extenuating circumstances that were not considered, then maybe that should be, and, you know, I would expect the rankings maybe to change year from year and new things come in
Correct.
and those kind of things. But I agree, we don't want to get into, you know, arguing about Excel columns and things like that of like, now, you know, like get that a little higher, because it's hard.
Right, it's hard, and everyone thinks their issue is the biggest
hard.
issue, and
Right.
and they're all bad. I mean, if
That's
they
right.
made the ranking, there's an issue. So, and there are a lot that didn't make the ranking, and there's still issues. But you know, we as a city can't address them all, and if we had a plan on how to solve it, we need to stick to our plan.
I'll tell you, I was hoping that we find out this is, you know,
Me too.
drinking water,
Me too.
Yeah.
because, I don't, you know, whenever we get to it, I don't know what we're gonna do.
Exactly. I am still holding out hope that it's drinking water, but I'm not sure it is.
Yeah, I mean, they can certainly sample it more than once. I know we had that with that area of Strassner and Brentwood Boulevard. You know, 2010 South Brentwood's sewer lateral, if you recall, was incorrectly hooked up. It was abandoned pipe, and then it was pooling, and we would throw salt on it, even though it's technically not a road, but it was a safety issue.
Well, I think the concern, or maybe what people thought, well, it can't be a spring, is that, I mean, even when we weren't getting any rain
Yeah,
at
it
all
rained
to
all the
recharge a spring, it was still every 5 minutes kicking out a ton of water. So it's like, I get why people are like, is this really a spring, or could it be just a constant saturation coming from a leak somewhere?
Right.
you know, and like I said, again, I feel like we can't move forward with anything until we actually get a definitive answer from American Water. And I don't know why it takes this long to get that.
Yeah. There is another one that they sent, I didn't put it on the list, but I wrote it by hand. 8125 Florence, I don't know if anyone's talked to you about that, but 8125 Florence, which would be on the north side of Florence, east of Lewis, like closer to, like heading towards like Oak Tree Park, the upper
Okay.
lot.
Yeah,
There's water running along that curb. So I called that in, gosh, when was it? Like end of last week. And I saw that there's utility flags out there now. So I don't know, what that indicates to me is that they've investigated it and they're gonna be doing some further digging or something. Cause there's water running along the edge, but it's a non-emergency, so they're trying to figure out whether it's the main or the service. But it's not just groundwater, it's definitely something that's being pressurized and charged. So, 8125 Florence. Yeah. The woman had notified you, Bola, and then you sent us an email or sent me an email. I
Yeah,
think it was
that
like,
one. Okay,
if it wasn't last weekend, I think it was.
last weekend. It was
Yeah.
Sunday or something.
Yeah, because I called them like Monday morning, I think is what I remember. But they gave us a ticket, which I sent to the resident and said, well, if you have any further questions, just call that ticket number, and here's the 800 number to call them, so. Switching gears, the access ramp curb cut at Lee Wind Trail, where we originally proposed doing that at Eulalie and Rosalie on the opposite side, on the Lee Wind side, that area is going to be ripped out. You know, that's all part of, which we'll get into later, the Lee Wind Trail repairs. So whatever, if we had actually done something, it would have been, you know, wasted effort. So I'm kind of glad that nothing happened there, because that's all going to be ripped out. And we'll look at it with Castle. We had sent them information earlier this week, since you had reminded us, and it's like, oh yeah, it'd probably be good if we could incorporate the two. If not, then we can certainly come in there later after it's repaired and section out that piece and put in a curb ramp. And then Mary Kay Court, we just haven't gotten to it, but the goal was still to put some sort of geogrid or something in that island. You know, we would just code that to streets and sidewalks for next year. I mean, the material's not that expensive. We would do it in-house. And we do need to get to it so that, you know, in the spring, we'll actually have like a test area and see if that helps with rutting. And if that works, I know there were other areas that Eric had pointed out that we could possibly do. And then we already talked about the manhole cover at 2323 Park Ridge. And I think that is it.
Thanks, Dan. I just wanted to get some of these back on the,
Yeah.
to-do list, because we had so much distraction with all the flooding and stuff, so.
Yeah, and part of that bicycle awareness, like I said, it'll be signs and posts, which we can do over the winter. It's no big deal. If it's warm enough, we can put either stencils or sharrows and do something that way too. That's it.
Great, thanks, Dan.
Thanks.
Parks and Rec.
All right, so a few things to talk about tonight as far as the department report. The first is kind of the master plan. We're working on the RFQ right now. Our goal is to have that out before the end of the year, so that way we have 4 weeks to kind of get it out to local, national landscape architects, and then do interview process end of January, early February to bring a recommendation back to this committee in February. So we're moving on that, and we're real excited about that project. The sports complex field renovation, this is something that we'll be doing pretty much the rest of the winter. We ran, when we hit the flooding, we did the best we could to just basically get our softball field specifically back up and running again. We had some great time with some dry weather. We were able to get a lot of softball in, and then the end of the fall came and early winter, and it became hard. I mean, our fields are unlevel. We have lots of puddling areas. The outfields are in bad shape, so we need to kind of really take the time in the winter to re-level everything, get rid of, level out the infield and the outfield, the lip, make sure we bring in the material to kind of even it out and get rid of all those puddling aspects, and then those two should be ready to go. Field one is the tougher one, obviously. It still has a lot of debris in it that we're trying to remove. We're actually trying to work with a company as part of a FEMA, hopefully reimbursement project, so that we can just get it done through someone quicker than staff could do on their own. So that's what we're working on right now with the fields. But field one's going to be the more difficult one, and it's going to take some time. The other thing that we kind of added on, which we just talked about today, was the Brentwood bound construction cameras. I could pull them up, but you just see a bunch of dark right now because it's night, and I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't think about that. Although, see the lights at the pavilion.
Yeah.
There's our lights. It's all lit up. Sorry, I love this pavilion. It's great. So thank you very much. It's a wonderful facility. I actually went out there on Monday night and turned on the catenary lights and took some pictures, and it looks beautiful. So, but the idea of the cameras was the fact that it was part of the Phase 1 mitigation projects contract. They will be done with substantial completion by the end of this month, which means the cameras go away. The city will own the cameras afterwards, and so we have a couple options. One is we can just turn them off. That's probably the easiest thing to do. The secondary one is we could see if another contractor will pick them up. It would make sense to ask Plocker to do it because they will be out there the longest. The third is that we just take care, we do the contract ourselves. That would probably be the cheapest way because Plocker will add a cost increase to it to get some profit. So we could do it. It'd be $400 per month per camera. We could, in talking with Navigate and Brian, we could probably get the playground pavilion or the playground to 1 camera if we wanted to. We could drop it down to 3, or we can keep all 4 and really kind of relocate some to make sure we still get the creek, because I know during times of rain, it's been beneficial for the city to kind of see those pictures. So we could do either. I think my recommendation, and when we're talking with Bola, would be to take on that cost from the city, and then kind of determine if we need 3 or 4. So,
I mean, I assume we're paying for the functionality, whether we're paying contractor or paying, or taking it on ourselves.
yes, I mean, ultimately, it's basically running the
Unless we turn it off and just
Yeah,
leave hardware just to sit and deteriorate.
the cost really is getting it on and through the Sensora is a website that lets you do it live. That's really what the cost is. The camera cost is already done. We've already paid for that. So it's just keeping them online on our website if we want to do that.
Are there concerns once the park opens of having real-time cameras and camera on a playground and then along with that, so that's question A, and then question B is this any way tied to the police? And so if we think the A part's okay, is this something the police could use?
We'd have to look into.
They're 2 different issues.
Yeah, we'd have to look into the legality of having cameras in an open space. I have seen it done in parks. St. Charles Park, St. Charles County has like an extreme park. It's skateboarding and bikes, but it is an enclosed facility, and you have to sign a waiver saying that that there are cameras on. The difficulty with an open park is how do you make sure everyone knows? I mean, we could do it with signage, but the real question.
I don't know, and this is a good discussion, because I don't know that we thought about leaving the cameras at the playground after it's open. It's
Okay.
just during the construction. So unless we're asked to, revisit that, I don't think we were thinking about that. But we've had extensive conversation with Chief Spees, and there will be flock cameras all leading into the park area. So we're just waiting for MoDOT to be done and road infrastructure to be there for Russell and all those connections, and where Bi-State is before we would put in the flock cameras. And I know there's going to be Wi-Fi access, because we've been talking to IT about that. I think we could structure the camera in such a way that it points just to the creek and that there, but the ones to the playground, we probably want to remove that
Once it's open, yeah.
once it's open.
Yeah, and we will have security cameras at the pavilions, even in the playground for security, and at the tunnel. So, I mean, we do have some already. When you think about the liability of those type of things, we're already.
General public can't log on to those and see them.
Correct.
Oh,
Right,
no.
that's the
This is-
difference.
this
That's
is
the
the
difference.
That's the
This is
difference, is
real-time.
logging in
You're
real
looking at
time. Yep,
playgrounds, yeah.
exactly. So,
I mean, for construction and for, I think, for construction, it's nice to continue to use that as a promoting what's going on and how things are progressing. Beyond that, once everything's launched, you know, I don't know if I agree that I agree definitely not at the playground, but even for the creek to be able to monitor what's going on there, it's
Yeah,
probably not an absolute necessity.
when we thought about costing, we were only costing it through the end of the construction and then ending it once construction was done. We still have the 4 cameras. I'm assuming there'd be a card that we could pull off if we wanted to use it for security in some other ways. We've used trail cameras before at different pavilions and different facilities just to see, you know, if we can catch
Well,
anything going
I
on.
was kind of wondering too, are the cameras, are they something that can be incorporated into the police systems that they already have? So that then they are locked down and secure, anything that,
I'm sure they can be.
We can talk to
We'll
IT.
talk to IT.
so I mean, after construction, maybe it's something, so the hardware doesn't just become obsolete. Maybe it's something that we can repurpose. I don't know.
And then lastly, and not that I expect a conversation tonight, but I just kind of want to start the conversation. And again, that is Brentwood Days. And we came back with a recommendation in February. We've talked about that. We all removed that. And obviously we heard loud and clear that people wanted carnival rides. And so we've been trying to figure out if we can get carnival rides into the new park. And we don't see a good way of doing it, just to be honest. We looked at having stuff across the street on Russell, but then you have 2 very separate events, and would parents even want that, to have kids on one side? Some might want to, and then we'll be babysitting, the others won't, and then, you know, we might get some flack there. We even thought about maybe closing off a portion of Brazil, whether it was from Brentwood to the parking lot, but that's a very small area, so you only get like 2 or 3 carnival rides at the most there. And then that means all the traffic would have to come through Pendleton to Brazil, and that would be difficult, but doable. The other way was doing from the parking lot up to Pendleton, but there's such an incline there that we can't put any carnival rides there. You know, the easiest way is to put it on Brentwood Boulevard, but hey, county's not going to let us do that. But it'd be great if they did, because that would be a wonderful place for it. And so we've looked at a few other things. But we just don't see a real viable solution. Even if you look at the event lawn, which again, I would hate to even try to put anything on there, damage. It's not as big as fields 2 and 3, so you can't have as many. We'd be tearing up the grass and irrigation, more importantly, and that's where it really comes down to. So in our mind, you know, real quick, and we're open to other solutions if we're missing something obvious, is moving it to Brentwood Park and not having carnival rides, or conversely, keeping the carnival rides, and that means keeping it in the Brentwood Sports Complex. So, again, I just wanted to broach the subject because it gets to, when we hit January and February, we have to start contracting out with the carnival rides and start making plans. So I just wanted to get this subject out, again, to think about over the holidays, and then come back in January, maybe complete it, unless you guys have a firm thought tonight.
Maybe this is an opportunity for the citizen Brentwood Bound Group or something. I don't know, maybe not.
I mean, I think that there's a lot of variables that have to be figured out. Obviously, our parking lot, with the volume of people that come to a Brentwood Day celebration, is not going to be sufficient to handle all of this. So people are going to have to park on Russell. They're going to have to park we're going to have to shuttle people to it. They're going to have to potentially, you know, use the trail systems to walk there. So I wouldn't overlook the opportunity to have the parking lot have some rides, because you're not going to be able to have enough parking spaces for everybody that's coming there anyway.
We did think about that, and one that I forgot to mention that, so I apologize. It is a permeable parking lot. Yeah.
Okay, so that
we are afraid we're going to ask. We actually have a meeting with one of our landscape architects next week, so we're going to approach that subject with them.
Okay.
So.
And then what about the big flat area for MSD that they have, that big old, just to the north and on the other side of the lake?
Yeah, I mean, there is some concrete there. I'm not exactly sure exactly what's going to be the final look of that. I could obviously talk to, Dan might know if it's part of, actually, I'm not sure if that's part of the Manchester Road project or not. Obviously, I could talk to Navigate a little bit. Ultimately, I think the idea is that part might be, nah, that will be in the park. That's not part of that land that we're going to,
No, it's in the park.
yeah.
I mean, I think if we can be creative, if St. Mary Magdalene Parish can have a pretty sizable number of carnival rides on their little parking lot, we certainly have got to be able to figure out to have some. We don't have to have 10 rides, right? But
We thought about,
3 or 4 of them to sort of give people the feel and have cater to the kids that want to ride the rides, I think.
we even thought
is
about
important.
going down the trail system, so you kind of,
Yep.
go around the lake, and we've thought about that, but we're not sure it's going to be wide enough or long enough for the Carnival Ride Company. We thought the area below, because it is grass, and it's great if it's not going to flood, but once you, I mean, the one time we get the rain, we'll never have a Carnival Ride Company again. So, I mean, there's lots of things we're kicking around as well, and we'll keep thinking about stuff. If we come up with a better solution, I'll let you guys know next month. All right, and so that kind of leads us to the last bit, which is the turf management program. We kind of kicked this around a couple of years ago, and it kind of got delayed, and we brought it back in May and got delayed, and then we're finally back. So I will try to get through stuff quickly, being cognizant of time, but also thoroughly as much as I can. And so just as a brief history, when we did our master plan in 2013, one of the biggest things it showed were people were unhappy about the conditions of the parks. And to be honest, they were not in great shape. I knew that when I came to Brentwood. Great potential. I love the park system. We have great potential, but it needed some work. And at the time, in 2016, we transitioned park maintenance from Public Works to the Parks and Recreation Department. And so our first focus was how do we enhance the maintenance and aesthetics of the system and increase the professionalism of the staff. And we came up pretty quickly. It was really Bull and I came up with a 5-year plan. I told Bull, and then she said yes or no. And we worked on things, and the very first thing we had to do was urban forest management. So we took over that at the same time. There is a report out there that showed 100 critical trees that needed to be removed, and so we had to jump on that, and that became a focus pretty early on. Secondary was landscaping around city facilities. It was one of the things that we wanted to see improvement on to kind of really showcase City Hall, police, fire, Parks and Recreation. It was pretty dismal, and so we really worked on that. And so we restructured the department. We developed, park maintenance standards. We did tours, things like that. When we took over, it was shocking how little equipment was dedicated to park maintenance. We had one mower, one tractor, and I think one string trimmer. And to be honest, that's just not enough. I mean, you can mow, but you can't do much else. And so we focused on capital improvements. We looked at what we needed to do throughout the park system, and I think, I like to talk to Oak Tree Park's a good example. It was not in good shape in 2013, but through capital improvements, we've made the whole park look a lot better, especially in the main area, so we've been proud of that. Landscaping, starting really first with, the city facilities, and again, we're proud of, our staff is proud of what we do, and it's always nice to get recognition as we got at the last board meeting. We start working on getting equipment that they needed, making sure that they had everything they could do, and then we developed a project list that we are still trying to check things off. There's a lot to do, and we know that we're not done. To be honest, I am very proud of what we've done in the past 6 years at this point. Even with COVID, we took a decent step back on COVID because it was a rough year. We were mowing, we were cutting. So doesn't mean that we know that we're in a perfect place. If you've listened to me talk before, I want to win the Gold Medal Park Award. It is the contended award you can get through NRPA, our national organization. And I think with the dedication that the city has made to parks in the past 5 years specifically, with the renovation of the rec center, with Brentwood Bound, it is something that we should strive to. Are we ready to do it today? No, but I think we're getting closer and closer, and it is something I'd like to bring to the city. So that comes down to what is a turf management program and how would we actually make sure we do it? And if we talk about a management program, which is a manicured turf with minimized weeds, it really is a program, and we would need to really make it a priority of what we do. It comes with funding, equipment, time, and the biggest thing is water. And that's what we don't have in most of our parks. We don't have irrigation in any of our parks, and so that becomes the trouble spot. And so, to be blunt, it was not part of our 5-year program, and there's a couple reasons why. There were other priorities. I mentioned the failing capital equipment. There was other things that we just need to get done, the urban forest, the landscaping, so things that we wanted to do. And if we wanted to do it, we didn't have the equipment. We still don't have the equipment to kind of do a formal program. We're getting close, but it's not there. And then you look, to be honest, I came from Clayton. We have a great park system. They had a great park system in the city of Clayton. But if you get down into the bowls of Shaw Park, if you get to some of their outer parks, stuff without irrigation, it's a very similar look. If I love Forest Park. You get in Forest Park, it is a very similar look. I mean, we're not that much off from those facilities. It doesn't mean that that's what we should strive to, but it's just that's why other priorities came up. And we know it's kind of limited if all you can do is seed. And so we thought, how do we make it better? And we'd work on small pockets. So the Oak Tree Park, again, is another one. When we did Oak Tree and we put the new playground in and put the new pavilion, we had to put sod around to kind of start with a better stand of turf that we can maintain easier. So that's kind of what we're doing. And again, that's kind of the idea of Brentwood, the new Brentwood Park too. So it comes with basic stuff: weed control, seed application, fertilization, aeration, and again, it's not rocket science. It can be done. You just need the perfect conditions. And so what we do basically is, we have an aerator. We bought an aerator last year, and we kicked that thing out this year, especially in the spring. We can fertilize, we can seed, but the biggest issue is you only get a 30% germination rate without water. And so that where it becomes a little bit more troubling. The funding, what do we need? It's about, $7,500 to $20,000. And we did these numbers in May before, during the price. We still see seed continuing to increase. Seed used to be $1 and $1.12 a pound. We're now almost at $3 a pound for seed. But it still can be done. You look at the lower end, in McKnight Park, that's where your $7,500 comes. When you get to Memorial Park, you'll be a lot more. Utility, and you see if you actually have water, there'd be the increase in water. What we need is an aerator, slit seeder, water tank, tractor, utility vehicle to kind of help out. We have the aerator in place. We wanted that specifically to make sure we started well on Brentwood Bound. We have the water tank. The slit seeder is really to get the seed into the dirt. People smarter than me, my park superintendent, it's like, you can overseed all you want, but if you don't get into the dirt, it's just going to grow and it's going to fly. And so that's kind of why we're looking to get a slit seeder in the near future. And time's a big thing. And one of the largest issues we have is we actually spend a lot of our times not in our park system. When you think about the work the horticulturalist does, who would help with the turf management program, what the urban forester does, they spend most of their time outside at city right-of-ways. Happy to do it. We're proud to do it. But again, it takes away time that we have. We actually maintain 26 properties and right-of-ways, as big as, Memorial Park, as small as a island on one of the side streets. And so that is what we go through and try to make sure what we handle all the time. And typically, the right-of-way stuff is typically done with Public Works or streets and other city departments. Happy to do it. Again, I'm just kind of showing what we kind of do. So we spend about 30 to 45% of our time outside of parks. And even worse is that we do it during the green season when that's the best time to work on a turf management program. Like right now, we help out, if we have a lot more time because we're not mowing every day now, but now it's not the time to be growing grass. So that's where it kind of goes to, the available time. And honestly, the biggest thing is water. We talked about the germination seed, granular application, and even fertilizer. You got to have water, kind of keep it effective. We can manually water. You can get out hoses and things like that. It's not easy. It's not effective. It does not work very well. It can be done, but it's not. It doesn't work really well. So when we look at if we want to implement a formal program, we look at time, maybe reassessing some priorities, transferring responsibilities, maybe even contracting out some tasks that frees up some time for us. Funding, we can find a way for funding. I mean, that's one of the good things about the Parks and Recreation fund is that we can figure that out. It just usually means the easiest way to do it is decreasing capital. So we would decrease that capital, which would increase the amount of operational budget to do that. And then finding water is the biggest issue as we go. What we did this year. Is we aerated all of our city facilities. We got some of the heavier traffic facilities. We try to get those 2 times, so we were able to get every city facilities, the Brentwood Sports Complex, playing fields. A lot of good that did us in July, but at least we did it. And then we got mainly the high traffic areas and the other parkways done at least once. We got the pre-emergent and granule done. And so we're still, at that time, we're still trying to get some of that stuff in as we got parks ready to open. And, I think we did a decent job, but again, we could always do better. And we'll continue, at least what we're trying to do is, more of an informal program to try to rebuild the turf. Talking to our park superintendent, if we do this with the current equipment without irrigation to drastically improve the coverage, would take about 5 to 7 years. We can, with money, I can do anything. I've always said that. We can rip out everything, we can sod everything, we can start with a brand new layer, and we could probably maintain that a little easier. That's a lot of money, right? We can put irrigation in, that's a lot of money. And so there's things that we can do, but I think it is a conversation of what the priorities are throughout everything. And my park superintendent would kill me if I didn't make sure I mentioned that the 5 to 7 years is an ideal growing conditions. Like if we were we took a step backwards because of the flooding this year. So we're gonna have to kind of start over and go from there. We continue to work on it. I will tell you that we're proud of our park system. We know there's improvement. We know turf is an area we can get better in. And so we continue to try to do the best we can with what we have currently and look for ways to improve what we have, things like slit cedars and things like that as we move forward. And that was kind of the quick conversation of turf management, and obviously happy to talk about anything else.
I mean, just a comment, I appreciate the work you've done to this. I definitely appreciate the history lesson and that, okay, this is what the department's focused on. I think it's remarkable, especially when you look at how much actual parkland our small little community has. That's why I think it's something that we need to definitely focus on, and I recognize that this is not something we can turn around overnight, and the 3 to 5 year, 5 to 7 year thing doesn't seem unreasonable, especially after you're looking at maintaining that. I mean, we've got a lot of neglect that we're trying to, that was prior to you, and it just goes wild, right? I think, this would be interesting to see add as a layer to the master plan and to find out to your point about Clayton and Forest Park is valid. I think there are areas that they invest in and that are highly seen and, that you try to make look as nice as possible. And then there are areas that you just sort of as a refuge to let go wild, right? And those are good ecologically to have. So it would be interesting to see from a Parks Master Plan study, identifying areas that we should potentially invest in a turf management zone and other areas that we might say have, wildflowers or prairie grass or some other structure that is allowed to go somewhat wild but can be defined and manicured as opposed to just clover everywhere,
No, I would agree. I think that would be a good thing to kind of discuss during the master plan. And sorry to interrupt, but the two things that, as you were talking, as I thought of, is that, when we look at projects that may be coming down in the future, we kind of look at those areas of how we can improve that too. And the one example is, I'd say, and I think you'd probably agree, one of our worst areas of grass is probably Rogers Parkway. Yeah. And we have a lot of issues. We got water running down from those and coming down into that bowl, and it makes it hard to kind of seed and everything. And we look at, the possible extension of the greenway. If we follow that plan, that is a way that you can actually fix that, start with new grass and move forward. The other thing that I should put in here a little bit more is a little bit staffing too, is we have a wonderful staff, but in the last few years, we didn't have anyone who had a whole lot of turf management experience, and besides our park superintendent. We had gotten someone who wanted to get training on it and move forward and try to take that on as part of her curriculum, which was Karen, and unfortunately, she's left us and moved on. What we're trying to do is we have a position open now, and we're trying to make, it's a ball field position, and we're trying to make more turf management a part of that position. So
Good idea.
not only are they maintain the fields and, on good days in the summer and spring before you have to do a lot of field work, maybe he can be out, aerating, seeding, and helping out with the turf management program. So we're looking at those things too, and I forgot to mention that, so I apologize.
Plan.
Yeah, Nancy.
So I completely agree with putting this sort of concept in the Parks Master Plan. I personally don't think we should be irrigating. I like that we're irrigating the new park, but I don't think we should be irrigating all these parks. It just seems a waste of water and money, and we have a sustainability commission, and I just can't imagine that. I mean, first we're throwing chemicals down, and then second, we would be watering it. So, but I certainly think it sounds like what you're doing here is a good plan, and not every. We're gonna have clover. We're just always gonna have clover, and we're gonna have violets, and we're gonna have the ugly, thicker green. I don't know what that thicker stuff's called, but I mean that will, regardless of what kind of plan. But it sounds like you're on a really great direction, and thanks for putting this together.
Yeah, I just I think this would be good in the master plan. I get, when I was hearing turf management plan, I kept thinking about the, sports complex. When you said turf, that's what I kept thinking about, because I've never heard anybody complain about any of the park conditions. I think they look great. I agree with Rogers Parkway a little bit, but, I think it was, all the complaints I get are about the, softball fields having weeds and stuff like that. So, I think that would be a good component in the master plan of, especially as we're talking about maybe a new soccer field and those kind of things. So thank you. I think this is a great level set as we prepare for that to kick off next year. Jack, any questions? Okay, thanks, Eric.
All right, thank you. I think I'm still up. I don't think there's anything for planning. All right, so sustainability is next. And Sustainability Commission has been busy this last month. So a couple things to just highlight is sustainability plan has been, we've gotten done, the commission approved the last section of the plan. So we are now trying to get it together in one document, make it look really nice. Thankfully, we have people much smarter than I who are doing that. Our marketing person is going to be putting that together. And so we hope to be able to review that in January and then be able to present it to Public Works in the first quarter or second quarter of 2023. So we're, I know the commission's real excited about being able to bring that forward to the Public Works Committee for your review and recommendation. We talked about in October the Midwest Climate Collaborative, and so we have applied for that, and we have been accepted into the MCC. So they are setting up meetings. They like to set up a meeting after the holiday to kind of discuss what our role in the MCC will be. Once I get a date, I'll probably talk to some people in the commission to see if, obviously, Chairman Burkemper and if Alderman Wegge or Alderwoman O'Neill want to be involved with that, we'll invite them. But they've talked about seeing if we can help out with the Midwest Climate Asset Map, so we're working on that right now. And then there's the Midwest Climate Summit in February, which we will receive free registration for because we are members of the MCC. So that's kind of the first start of it. The Ameren, staff spoke at an Ameren U event about EV charging stations in October. Ameren was wanting to kind of showcase our partnership with Ameren in kind of one of their case study or flyers. And so we got that approved. And the first draft has we got the first draft. Janet looked it over, made some recommendations and changes, and we just got back their second draft today. So we're looking forward to that, and we'll see how that looks. The U.S. Green Building Council presentation. So last year I presented the USBC Annual Green Building Showcase about Brentwood Bound. Their education committee liked the presentation and like us to come back and talk at next Friday at their coffee break, and kind of give up an update about Brentwood Bound and specifically how we did during the rain events in July. And boy, we have tons of data about that and video and pictures, and real excited to kind of tell the story of how well Brentwood Bound has functioned since we're still not even done yet. So I'll be doing that next Friday. And then last is there was at November last month, the Stephanie Todd from the Missouri chapter of the International Dark Sky Association talked about maybe proper lighting and for safety in the environment. We talked about that is their recommendation that you kind of set a program of either 3,000 Kelvin, they prefer 2,700 Kelvin, and to do that, it reduces the amount of blue light, which is detrimental to health and wildlife and insects. And really what they're also saying is that there's been multiple studies that show that brighter lights do not really reduce crime. In some ways, having a glare is more detrimental for crime, and so it is a recommendation to see if we could update section 400.1880 lighting to strict lighting to no greater than 3,000. So a motion was made to see if we could reduce that current lighting code using 2,700 Kelvin. And if that's okay with the Public Works Committee, we'll work with Whitney and bring that back, bring an updated ordinance back to Public Works for consideration.
I think Nancy has a comment.
I do. So how does, so we spent a lot of time talking about the lights along Manchester Road, and they're 4,000 Kelvin. So, so we're putting in all these lights that are supposed to last for however many years, and we tried to reduce it a while back, and oh no, they've already been ordered, and they're the same thing Maplewood has. So we went with it, and then we're getting different data, and I don't disagree, and I actually kind of personally prefer the light at the 3,000 or 2,700 Kelvin. So what does this mean for Manchester Road and for all these new lights that we've just put in?
If I may, that's exactly it, right? I mean, since I've been on the board, I don't know how many hundreds of streetlights we've installed in this town. Handley Industrial, Manchester, Rosalie, and we've kind of fought this battle every time. And I will say this is evolving, you know, so like I think some of these medical studies are now coming online. I think, you know, when we looked at Manchester and we had that conversation, it was not compliant with MoDOT's, you know, lighting standards. And so that's why we wanted to make the change there, but we couldn't because we had to, you know, comply with MoDOT. So I think, you know, it's like, I view it as like stopping that from happening again. I don't think we would go back and replace anything. But I think whenever one burns out, you would replace it, even if that leads to a different temperature, you know.
Yeah. I mean, is that the plan, that maybe once they start burning out, we do that? But like maybe once like a certain number burn out, we replace them all? Because as you said, it's kind of bad.
And I know during the presentation they said, you know, having something in your ordinance will help with some of the Ameren situation, maybe not MoDOT, but Ameren, because they'll follow the city's ordinances. So if we have something in place, they'll be required to actually put in the you know, their lights at the 27 or 3,000 Kelvin.
And I talked to Ameren about that, and they said it doesn't really change anything from them because they're only installing 3,000 at this point. You know, so they're already mixing, right? Every time they come replace, which you already have a mixture of their, you know, it's a sulfur, you know, Cobra head right next to an LED already. So they had no issue with this at all. I think maybe the readiness of the 2700K was giving them a little bit of pause, but that's probably where the market's going to go. So I view this as, you know, kind of preventing us from making those mistakes in the future. I mean, High School Drive is probably the next place we're going to be putting streetlights on, and then also the businesses that are coming in, because we have nothing that controls if they're putting lights into their parking lot or something that controls the temperature there as well.
Someone educate me what, like, street light that Dan's putting in, what Kelvin is that at?
Dan, do you know?
4,000, I believe.
Just in. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I just was
Yeah,
curious.
again, color temperature in kelvins and lumens, brightness, are two different things. And even though a 3,000 or 27,000 Kelvin feels like it's dimmer, it's, from a lumen standpoint, it's actually, lumens are lumens, right? Brightness is brightness. It's your brain registering the color temperature. I obviously, I fought for this when we were buying the lights. I wanted them to be at least 3,000 or less. So I absolutely support this, and I do agree that you gotta, it is one of those, you gotta start somewhere. I hate the idea of mixed along a street, but over time, I guess that'll work itself out if we create some sort of an ordinance that restricts it from going any higher than that. And and I certainly don't want to spend taxpayer money on replacing light bulbs that are, for all intents and purposes, doing what they should do, even though they're not the right color temperature. But, so I don't know, what kind of, do you need a motion to move this along? I mean, I'll make the motion that I direct staff to create the ordinance that aligns with the Dark Sky Association recommendation.
Second.
That's 2,700 Kelvin.
2,700 Kelvin.
Does this apply to what exists now, just for my clarification, or is it anything going forward?
Yeah, the way I see it is that anything that's currently in place is grandfathered, but anything new would be the new.
And that
follow the new
includes
guidelines.
Manchester Road, that's grandfathered in, correct?
Well, we've already bought all that and
Yeah,
installed it.
so, okay,
So
because you said
anything
anything
that
that's
hasn't
in,
been
it's not
purchased or
in it.
installed, I would think would have to,
Okay. Not including Manchester Road.
And I have no idea how that would go if, let's say, we're putting a light on in the future in MoDOT, and MoDOT's design standards are non-compliant.
But
They say
ours-
you have to be 4,000, and our ordinance says 2,700, you know?
That is a disconnect, because typically we have to abide by their, Dan, could you get up? We have to abide by their standards, not ours. Otherwise, they don't do the project.
well, but I think the main arterials are obviously a little different as well. I mean, we're talking about lights throughout the city that we do have some
Sure.
control over.
Not Manchester, but maybe McKnight Road, half of, if we were, the board were to ever decide to like that. Sure. Okay. I just wanted to be sure so that we're not scratching our heads later among staff. Okay.
You want to clarify
I
that
think
motion for
one
me,
thing
please?
is that, oh, sorry, go.
The motion is to direct staff to draft an ordinance to bring back to this committee for review that follows the recommendation of the Dark Sky Association, or whatever it's called, Alliance, at 2,700 Kelvin
Thank you.
for all outdoor lighting, future outdoor lighting, yes, thank you.
Including replacements.
And I think one thing this ordinance will do is, because you're seeing a lot of towns are starting to do this, I think it'll probably move some of those bigger policies in that direction as well. Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Great.
Great. Whitney, start working on that.
Thanks, Eric. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. So many. All we have is the meeting minutes.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any comments, questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Great. All right, old business, 8A. Back to fees.
Good evening. David Fairgrieve is available on Zoom. He's been home all week sick, but he is available on Zoom to join us for this discussion. At the discussion for last year for the 2022 budget, we had included funding for a senior inspector. That was approved on the caveat that we come back through for approval of hiring that inspector. We also began the discussion in June of increasing our permit fees from 6 per thousand to 7 per thousand, and started looking at adding fees for planning and zoning and architectural review board review. We did not get a motion from this board at that time, so we are looking to come back and get approval for those. The discussion with the Planning and Zoning Commission was that the fees seemed too high that I originally proposed. So I've proposed lowering them to that $50 for the Architectural Review Board, $100 for Board of Adjustments, which is its current fee, $100 for site plan review at the Planning and Zoning Commission, which is currently no fee, and then the conditional use and rezoning and text amendment is also $100. Those are current fees. So I just moved everything in those lines and then kept the residential at $50. We also do not charge for zoning verification letters, which we do research any open permits for every commercial property, go back on site plan review sometimes. So we would like to implement a $25 fee for that. And then we were looking at charging the fee for the occupancy inspections, and then that is currently free. And then once the resident comes in, that's a $45 fee. So we're now looking at charging the $45 fee for the inspection and maybe $25 for the actual permit from the resident. So, David is available on Zoom, so he can outline the need for the inspector, but we would like to proceed with that so that we do get it into our review quicker timeframes. We do really try to hit the 7 to 14 days, but we always would like to get them out as soon as possible. So,
Hey, when you have one, or maybe David, a question. So the contractor city license is $75. Does that apply if it's a homeowner contractor? Because I know they have to register as a contractor in the system.
yes, but no, that's no fee.
If it's a-
Homeowner, real estate agent, real estate managers, that's no fee.
Okay, thank you.
Just to be clear, though, as a homeowner, you can pull a contractor license for building permits only. You do not, unless you have an electrical license with St. Louis County, plumbing or mechanical, you cannot pull a MEP permit. It can only be for a building permit or a fence permit, but no trades are included in a homeowner contractor's license.
All right, thank you for that clarification.
Yes.
I would also like to add that we are wanting to include a penalty for any permits that are started without any approvals from the city. We've had a slew of projects that have started. A detached garage was almost completely built, and they never went to ARB nor got a building permit from the city. And the residents like, well, that's looking awfully close to the property line, so they contacted us, and that's how we found it. So on those, we think that the building permit fees should be doubled as a penalty. So, and if there's a habitual contractor that keeps doing this, there would be a $500 penalty fee.
Yeah, it would, the permit fee would double based on a project getting a stop work order. And I'll give you a really good example. Recently was a house over on Pine. He basically started, and when I put a stop work order on there with my card asking him to contact me, he just took it down and kept working. And he had removed the 9-foot retaining wall, put a whole new deck and kitchen, bathroom, and all that. And so I kept putting stop work orders up. And when I went to his house, he pretty much told me to go screw myself. And so now it's, now the guy has 3 summonses, and it's just, there's really, if they start work without building permits, there's no penalty right now at all. And everywhere else that I have worked, there has to be some kind of consequence if we have an ordinance that claims we need to have a building permit for, for their own safety, for the buyer's safety. So it's just a proposal.
But that's not included in what we're talking about tonight. That's just potentially coming down the road, right?
That is
No,
part
that's
of-
included.
Yeah,
That's
it is
part of it.
included under the, under the proposed fees. There's an Excel table,
Page 2.
page 2, yeah. So we would include that at this time as well. That was discussed at the June meeting as well, too, yeah.
I think the proposal seems very reasonable. Some of the ones seem very large when we looked at it earlier in the year. I think what you've proposed here is reasonable. I think there's some additional revenue for you, some sticks when people don't comply. So I think it's a great proposal, and I would like to make a motion that we pass the permit inspection fee proposal on to the Board of Aldermen.
Second?
Say, having seen a lot of, maybe some circumstances where people didn't realize they needed a permit. I feel like we're seeing that more frequently lately, but I don't know, it seems punitive, and I understand the rationale behind it, but I'm not sure it's gonna change that behavior, or if it's just a
So-
misunderstanding, I'm not
Then
sure I support that.
I mean, just, and I agree with you, there are people who do something without the knowledge, or their intent is not to pull one, over on anybody. And in that case, if they were to contact the city right away and make things right, then we have the authority and the ability to waive that penalty fee, and they just pay their regular permit fee. It's an option, and the terminology is that, there may be a penalty involved in starting work without building permits. So, it as the building official, it would be a case by case basis.
But would you trigger it off of the stop work?
There would be a stop work order, which really is there. It's a legal notice, and basically it's a letting them know they need to contact the city. I mean, I staple my cards to it, and a lot of people call me that, they've called me the same day and said, oh my God, I didn't realize I needed a building permit. And if they were to submit and get everything squared away, even though they had a stop work order, because of the terminology, they wouldn't necessarily get the doubled fee. But there are cases where it's necessary.
What about, so just for clarification, looking at the new, so a fence permit is $75. What if it's a
Yeah.
screen? What, would that be a building permit?
It's, currently, it's all under the same category in the zoning code as fences and screenings. So that's why it's just all-inclusive within the fence permit, but it could be both. You could do a building permit or a fence permit.
Yeah, I mean, they, different places do it differently. Like when I was in Olivet, fences were done per lineal foot. Ours is calculated $6 per 1,000, so plus $25 of an inspection cost. So it's, that's how we calculate a fence permit.
And are you guys still planning to talk at P&Z on the 14th about clarification of that?
Mhm.
Will that affect this in any way if we're,
No.
I guess, because we're not
I mean,
fully approving it? Okay. Jack, Jack.
Could I ask a question on the occupancy permits and
Yes.
The rationale behind the $25 surcharge if the home is occupied? or unit is occupied?
No, that's not how we're proposing it. Right now, we have an inspector go out and do an occupancy inspection. The numbers up to this point this year, we've done approximately 640 something occupancy inspections. We don't charge for that. There's no inspection cost at all.
Right.
And when the resident comes in, they pay $45 for their permit. So what we're proposing is, since most of the time and the effort goes into an occupancy inspection and the reinspection, we're proposing that the owners or rental management companies pay $45 upfront for the inspection and lower the cost for the permit from 45 to 25. So the cost will go up $30 overall, but we're shifting most of the cost to the actual person scheduling the inspection. There'll still be no charge for a property management company or a homeowner to apply for their license to do so. But what we're proposing is that the inspection cost of $45 to cover the inspector's time going out there.
Okay, and I'm on board with that. I'm just reading
Yeah.
in the,
There was that was a carryover that was discussed as part of the June
Okay.
meeting, is that we have a $25 surcharge if the home is occupied. That's generally because the inspectors kind of also as a penalty, it should be vacant to be prepared so that we can review and look at all of the life safety issues on the site. I can certainly have that removed, and it would just be the 45 and the 25.
I think that, I mean, in my opinion, is
Yeah, I mean, that I like that, you know, and I mean, they're told and they understand that if it's occupied and we miss something but catch it on the second inspection, it still needs to be fixed.
Right.
You know, if they have things blocked that we can't inspect, like windows, receptacles, you know, plumbing fixtures, whatever it is, you know, it just doesn't miraculously not have to get done because we catch it on the second attempt.
right, and I agree with that. I just, you know, I think having a blanket, if it's just occupied, then we're charging you another $25. In my opinion, I would like to see that.
We can
removed.
have that removed, or we'll change that for upcoming
Mhm.
Ways and Means and Board of Aldermen.
That was the only question I had. Thank you.
Yeah. And also going back to the, you know, going back to what Whitney had brought up earlier about the additional inspector, you know, right now, Scott and I are the only ones who are doing the plan review. And, you know, we are up close to, you know, 1,200 permit submittals and counting. So, you know, there is plenty of plan review as well for the additional person to be involved with.
Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, we have a motion on the table to take this up to was it Ways and Means or to the Alderman?
Do Ways and Means, should I amend my motion?
So for the first one, the fees, it would be the Ways and Means, so that's not till January.
Right.
When were you planning for this to be effective?
Just to follow the process. So Ways and Means would be January. If we get approval out of that, it would go to the Board of Aldermen in February.
Uh-huh.
So we would look to implement it, you know, March or April or May. We might want to give a little time frame between the difference. We can have that discussion if we want to have a delay to give people enough warning of when permit fees will be adjusted. So.
And we would, you know, we would be fair and we would post it, you know, like on the website so that, you know, in it plenty of time so they knew when it was coming with the date of change. So, you know, they wouldn't just wake up one morning and all of a sudden start having to book inspections. and have to pay the $45. So,
So I guess I'll make a motion to approve it here, send it on to Ways and Means and onto the board. I don't know if we, onto the board after that, I don't know. What the
Ways and
mo-
Means problem after that.
Still second that.
Three of us are on Ways and Means, so hopefully it's quick there.
Yeah, right.
Change the chair.
Not my problem. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. David, feel better?
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Was there a motion for both, or was it just for the fee?
Oh, do we
Because there
need,
was
do you
the
want a
the
motion for the?
position. What about the position?
Oh, was that need I didn't,
So it was, would be to move forward. We currently have that budgeted. I don't think that needs to go back.
To the board, no, we just need direction that they could go ahead and start the recruitment process to fill it next year.
in the budget,
The budget,
Or
but
did
you
we
had
say-
said
So
that they
over
could
the
not.
summer, I mean, just to remind everybody, you know, we were talking about, do we have the capacity to do it? And there were, you know, that was when we were talking about maybe bringing in the county and contracting with them for commercial. And that's, we wanted to delay this until, and that was intentional to bring it back here before we made that decision going forward.
did we ever get information about, I mean, the county came, probably didn't thoroughly discuss that to come up with a conclusion there.
Yeah.
Other than I think there was consensus to keep the home inspections.
Yeah, I mean,
For sure.
we talked about it at great length, but no conclusions were reached. I'll tell you, I still have the same concerns I had at the time, and that is, you know, inconsistency with the rest of the county on the commercial. I am in complete agreement on keeping residential in, but, and especially with Brentwood bound coming in, you know, how many new buildings are we gonna have that we just will not have the capacity to do it in-house? I still have that concern.
We will with another senior inspector.
And you know, when cities take on development projects, they don't necessarily grow their staff. They contract this out. So, and typically it's not always the county. So if you want us to do a deep dive into that, we can get you some information. I worked elsewhere where that's exactly what they did. So I think there are a number of issues that Alderman Weggie kind of generally speaks to. Stop at that.
I mean, I've been under the impression at times that we were using Gonzalez as an on-call plan reviewer to help offload.
We did that last year because we had 100% vacancy. So I think that was a different issue. We consistently use them from stormwater best practices. That's what their contract is for. And you know, we have on-call engineering with all the others, so because of general language, we're able to bring them on to help us for wherever there is need. But I think what probably would give this committee some level of comfort is if Whitney, David, and I kind of start to talk with Green Street to kind of, you know, set timelines and look at volume of what will be coming and then predict what the gap is and how we propose to fill that. Maybe that could answer the questions you have, rather than waiting until then and being very reactive to that.
I mean, I agree that, you know, those are all things that we will take some strategy and planning. And those are things that aren't going to happen within the next 6 months, right? I mean, these are going to be long-term things, and there's going to be periods where there's going to be a high time, and then there's going to be a kind of a lull, you know. So I think what we need to probably think about is, does the planning and building department are they adequately staffed? to manage and handle the permitting and the inspections and in order to service our residents the way they want to be serviced, and in order to service the contractors and businesses that come in that want to. I mean, we do hear complaints. If a second senior inspector would help sort of create the critical mass that we need in order to match what is expected, then I mean, I would, and I don't think not hiring that person and then speculating whether or not some other organization could do better. I think we have to put a foot forward and see what happens.
What the complaints are plan review, complaints
Well,
are.
it's a number of things. I mean, a lot of people don't, the MyGov system or whatever, or feeling like it's hard to get an inspection, or they're not it's too far out. And I think that there's both sides to those arguments too, with a lot of the cases that we look at it, right? We say, oh, well, you hear from somebody who's got a complaint, and then you really look into the background, and maybe they didn't have documentation right, or they didn't have something else right. So I think there's always a shared responsibility in situations that seem to go wrong. But I think my point is that when we get into staffing in our departments, we see benefits sometimes when we, add another person to it that can help really service things.
I'll give you an example. This week, we've had just one inspector on staff. David's out, Corey's out, Mike is out.
We have one.
We have just one.
Right.
And
I've even
he
offered to
tries
help
fit- yeah, and he-
Whitney,
Yeah.
just to
I mean,
bridge that gap.
And since this position has been included in the budget, I mean, I would make a motion that we start the recruitment process on seeing, I mean, we may not even be able to hire that person, right? It's going to take a while. So I'd make a motion to start the recruitment process for the second senior inspector.
Second.
I mean, I would still, when we talked over the summer, we were going to talk about, we always say that we strive to have an inspection within one day, and we strive to do these things, but we don't have any data to support that we do that, right? And I think that was one opportunity in MyGov, and maybe the new version, those kind of metrics can come out. Because I would love to be able to tell residents, look, here's the data. We do it within one day, or whatever it is, so that we can, use data instead of emotion.
If MyGov can print out, if there's a way MyGov can show me they're 90% of the time, they're responsible to set up their own inspections. And when they don't get what they want is when they call the city. And that's when we go into action to figure out what we can do to best meet their needs. So if they're online and they get online and their permit, like tonight, or maybe somebody is going online tonight in MyGov and looking for a schedule, and there's nothing available tomorrow, but they need it tomorrow, they'll call and leave me a voicemail. But if they book it tonight for Monday, then it's just booked that way. We don't know if that's what they actually want.
Right.
And so, and the majority of calls that I get for, quicker inspections, 99% of those calls are accommodated. There is no doubt that they are accommodated. We had an incident yesterday where there was an irate plumber who was belligerent to Whitney. And I mean, he was rude. He was absolutely rude. We still went out and did his inspection 2 hours before he said he needed it. So, we do go to any lengths to try to get things done and handled in a timely manner when we have to. it's just without that additional person, it's difficult to book everything via MyGov the next day just because it books in 30-minute blocks and there's only so many it'll allow you to do. That doesn't mean we don't do more than what's in there.
You know, when you talk about data, that's why at the Communications Committee, I was a strong advocate for the survey. Because oftentimes it's anecdotal, it's one or two. We don't know what the mass is. And then when you bring it to my attention and I start to provide you the other side of the story, we realize that what has been put out there is not always factually accurate.
I mean, our ultimate goal, our ultimate goal is to think of the outside first. We want the residents to have something done quicker. We want the contractors to have something done quicker. We try, we go to any lengths to try to make that happen. It just, there is every once in a while, something is going to slip through the cracks that doesn't work out the way everybody wants it to. And, those are generally the ones that come to you. And, but we really do try to make a serious attempt at making everybody get what they need in a timely manner.
And just to be clear, I know that's true. I really do. I'm not faulting anybody. This is more a systemic conversation. Like, are we staffed enough? Can we handle this? Are we, can we handle it? Because one of the regional reasons I propose outsourcing commercial is that I feel like being an inspector must be very stressful in this community because you're going from MEP to occupancy to commercial to a hotel. I don't know how you do it, honestly. So, it just seems tough.
I mean, there are pros and cons to outsourcing, and I've done both and seen what, both can bring. And personally, having an additional person, when it was proposed, it was thinking of the future and the vision of what was coming down the pipe. And now that things are starting to come here, now things they're really happening. Like now is the time where they're going to be happening, and to have somebody in place, I mean, it would be fantastic.
Okay.
And we can keep everything in here. And, sometimes St. Louis County can't get out there and we can't call them and tell them, hurry up. It just, it doesn't work like that. But I can leave my desk and go do an inspection. If Scott, Corey, Mike, and the new person are all slammed, I can get up and leave and go do an inspection to keep a project moving. That's one of the big benefits of having an additional person and trying to keep everything under our umbrella.
All right, any other comments or questions? So we have a motion on the table to start the recruiting or go forward with this?
I mean, that's,
Start the recruiting was the motion.
All right. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. Once again, get better, David.
Thank you. Is there a motion for that?
if it makes you feel better.
We can give you a motion.
Thank you all. I hope to see you soon.
All right, moving the new business, 9A. Oh, did I miss one? Did I miss one? Oh, I'm sorry, 8B, old, back in the old, sorry.
This was just to bring the group up to speed. If you recall, we've had a few meetings, one with Public Works and then to the full board. So there's basically two different things going on. You've got the Leewin Trail repairs, and then you've got the creek cleaning. So I kind of combined them together. But I did include a draft of the plans. I know Christy Brinkman with Castle Contracting's here too, but in case you had specific questions about the plans. But we've met as a group a few times and gone over the plans with them. And it looks like there's this scour lock system, which would basically be like a plastic gabion that the rocks would be in. And that would be utilized in the failure areas. So the failed areas have like the toe, the bottom of the slope has kicked out, and then there's erosion, And that's what's caused the top to kind of fail too, by the trail. It's like, because the bottom part's failing and the whole thing's kind of shifting. So these would be like massive blocks that would rely on gravity and friction to keep that stable. And then you would rebuild the trail, rebuild the curb, do the decorative fence on the north side of the bridge. So that's what you see here with the plans. So I don't know if you have specific questions on that. And then shifting gears to the cleaning, we got board approval to do up to $120,000 worth of time and material. And that would be the cleaning of both Black Creek and Deer Creek in the specified areas. So tomorrow we actually have a meeting over at the Galaxy Flooring to kind of walk that area and figure out how we're going to get access, where we're going to start exactly. I think we'll look at both areas, but the focus will primarily be the Black Creek area since it affects more businesses than the other one. And we'll be doing the stabilization of the trail. I don't know if they'll be working concurrently, but we can always check with Castle what their schedule's like. I don't know if you have any questions for her since she's in attendance.
As you're finalizing the design, is there anything you need from the board to proceed with that? Does that fit within the original?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there's a geotechnical component that we didn't have in the original scope, but it was fair because it wasn't included in any of the three proposals. But basically, it is for a geotech look at what the soil conditions are and will this mass block work, based on the parameters of the soil net that's there. Just a way to make sure that what they're proposing, they've looked at, soil nails and other systems, but, this is the most economical and seems to satisfy Corps of Engineers as well.
And you think we'll be able to get the curb cut on Lee Win there as well as part of this?
I don't know if you
while
guys
we're in
have
there?
looked at that. We just sent it over to them, to try to blend that concurrently. Right now it just showed trail and curb, but right in that curb cut area, I was thinking we could, do that. If they can't, then certainly Public Works can.
Okay. Comments, question? All right. Thanks for the update,
Okay.
Dan. Thanks, Christy. All right, now on the new business 9A.
We'll try to make this quick as well. So if you've been out in the parking lot, you know that with the construction through our parking lot kind of did some damage to 8758 Rosalie. And so we're kind of looking at things that we might be able to do. And we've talked about a community garden for a while. So we thought that a temporary community garden there would be a good use of that space until the city decides what to do with it in the future. So if the Public Works is agreeable, we'll go through, look up some rules, policies, set fees, bring that back, hopefully next month with the goal of trying to get this implemented sometime in 2023.
Make a motion to direct staff to look into that and bring back for us to pass on the board.
Second.
Yeah, Jeff?
I have a question, just in general with these. Does it require staff to, we just talked about turf management and how stretched your staff is.
Yeah.
Is this something that then we have to maintain and
Typically not. Typically the idea is we create, it'll take a little bit of setup time, but if we do it well, we could do it in the early prior to the season starting. And then you basically reserve or lease a plot and it becomes your plot.
okay, so it would be on the person that then we'd have to.
I want to be realistic. The reason why, we used to have a community garden, and it wasn't properly maintained
Right.
by those who used it. And so I heard from Parks, and I think maybe then it was under Public Works. So then when the city hired Eric, we did away with it. So I want to be realistic that if those who volunteer to take it on don't take it on, he's going to have to take it on.
That's my biggest concern. Because I do know these, I think that one garden used to be in Rogers Parkway.
Oh,
And
yeah,
it just got.
exactly.
It was,
It looked horrible.
it looked terrible.
Yeah.
And I'm fully supportive of gardening and it's, hey, we've got this composting program now and, it'd be good to do little educational things for the community, but I know people sometimes say they want to do something like that and then they just let it go and then it's going to be on us to, I just think we need to be careful about I know that it's an unused lot, and that, but I
I
just.
think the
don't know.
difference would be compared to what was done in the past is that there's an expectation that that was a garden. And the expectation here is that we just be creating garden plots for people who want to do it. If no one wants to do it, it'd be an empty garden plot. And I think, ultimately you saw kind of my really poor attempt at a site plan. I mean, we just get a few, a few kind of not raised beds, but at least some border and stuff. And so we'd mulch everything else. So it'd be low. It'd actually be just about the same, if not less maintenance of trying to grow grass and mow the grass.
I mean, I guess the concern I would have is just the location of it. A lot of the folks that live around there, probably have a large enough yard that they have some sort of a garden that they would tend to, like I do. I have a little garden that is plenty for me to to do. I would look at it, if we did a community garden somewhere, it would seem to me to locate it closer to Brentwood Forest or someplace that folks don't have a yard to tend, to have something like that, just so that it's actually usable for folks that, I don't know. I have concerns. I'm generally supportive of it. I don't want to just throw it on an empty lot just because it's an empty lot, right?
Across from a new home.
Across from a new home
built
and, yeah, right, fairly visible from the post office and City Hall. So I just think, got to be careful.
I mean, I'm in favor of this because I think one of the hardest thing of this is really going to be figuring out those policies and procedures. How are you taking care of it?
True.
You
If it's
know,
about.
what are we going to do about water? Which, hopefully we're not spending a lot of money running water or something. But I think if we figure that out and we have, things that work in Brentwood, then you can almost like move this around if we need to. If there's a different plot of land that makes more sense, then you've already got it all figured out. You can let's do it over there. You run the tiller in March or whatever, and there you go.
Make it sound so easy.
Well,
It's not that easy, but.
I wouldn't know because I have no sunny part in my yard, so
Okay.
I'll be trying a community plot.
And also, it seems like a great lot to do this on because we can see if it's successful. Hopefully, it's not going to be just a lot for forever. So if it doesn't work, then we don't move it. And if it's really successful, then we look for other places to do it. So it seems like we should try it, I think.
All right, any other comments or questions? All right, so the motion is to proceed and develop that plan, right? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Great,
We'll bring it back.
thanks, Eric. All right, we'll move on to citizen comments. Anyone else want to address the board? Okay, seeing no new business in front of the committee, this meeting is adjourned.